when we get to the second or third examples, we get reference to samples being taken at different times. Now this one is a mining related example. We've got a tailings dam, which is where the refuse from the mine is stored, and we've got 3 sites randomly located around that particular area being compared with 3 control sites some distance away. At each of the sites, a soil core is taken and the levels of contaminants in the soil are measured. So the dependent or response variables, the things we're interested in looking at to see if they are being affected or changed, are the levels of contaminants. And the design variables, or the factors, are these. First of all, again, the most obvious one is control versus impact, CVI. The second is site, because we've got 3 sites sampled at each of those locations. So this design has 2 spatial factors: CVI, where the levels are control and impact, and site, where the levels are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This design also has reference to when the samples are taken. Samples collected once before the dam is started to be used and once after the dam is operational. So we've got a single temporal factor here, which is before versus after, or impact status, operational, non-operational. In all of these cases, the words that are used, the particular labels don't matter. It's the underlying idea or concept that's important. So if we summarize this one, we've got the first spatial factor as control versus impact, where we've got the impact site or the dam versus the control locations. The second factor is the site, where we've got 1, 2, 3 at the control and 1, 2, 3 or 4, 5, 6 at the impact. Those are 2 spatial factors. And then the temporal factor is BA, before, after. If we remove the site factor here, so that we just have 1 site at the impact location and 1 control site, then what we've got is a standard Backy design, before, after, at control, impact. So the factors in that Backy design are before, after, BA, and CVI, control, impact, and the levels are before and after, and control and impact. Okay, moving to the last example, which is the most complicated because it includes a few spatial factors and a few temporal factors. This concerns a power plant which is going to be releasing effluent, in most cases that's just heated water, into a stream. And here's the power plant and here's its release location. And we've got sites sampled downstream of the plant and sites sampled upstream of the plant, and we could call those impact and control if we wanted to, or just upstream and downstream. In each location there are 2 sites sampled, 2 randomly located sites, and in each of those sites 3 pop nets are used to catch fish. So in the fish, the nets are released, they pop up, catch the fish that are swimming there, the fish are counted and then either released or collected for further examination. In this case, the dependent or response variable are the counts of the fish, and the design variables are the factors. And the first of those spatial factors is control versus impact, or upstream versus downstream. Doesn't matter which you use. The second is site, because we've got 1, 2 sites upstream and 1, 2 sites downstream. So we could label those upstream 1 and 2, downstream 1 and 2, or site 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we've got temporal factors in here because samples are collected in the wet season and dry season, 2 years before the plant starts operating and 2 years after. So that actually breaks down into 3 temporal factors there. The first of those is similar to the last example. We've got samples before and after. The second of those is probably fairly obvious. It's season, because samples are collected in the wet season and in the dry season. And the third temporal factor is year, because there's 2 years sampled before and 2 years sampled after. So altogether, that's the most complicated one we've looked at here. The first spatial factor is either CVI or UD, control versus impact, or upstream versus downstream. Those are the 2 most obvious sets of labels to use. So those are alternative descriptions for that factor. The next factor is site. We've got 2 sites upstream and 2 sites downstream, and they'd be labelled site 1, 2 upstream and 1 and 2 downstream, or 1, 2, 3, 4. Then this design has 3 temporal factors. The first is before and after, because samples are collected before and after the plant starts to operate. Second is season, wet season and dry season, and the third is year, because we've got, let's say, 2 years sampled before and 2 years sampled afterwards. And we would normally refer to that as by the actual chronological years, so 2010, 11, 12 and 13, if this was the first year the samples were being taken. Okay, hopefully that gives you a bit better insight into the way in which we go about working out what the factors and levels are in a design. And what you need to remember is that these are the things we're interested in. Those are the things we're trying to see effects on or changes in. Are there increases or decreases in the numbers of fish recorded down here after the plant starts to operate? So those are the response variables or the dependent variables, and they are numbers. These here and the upstream downstream elements of the design are often referred to as the independent variables. They're often categories of things, as in this case, upstream versus downstream, wet season versus dry season. And what we're trying to see is how they influence the actual things that we're interested in the natural community. Now, these examples have examples of both biological and environmental variables, or biotic and abiotic. Here it's just biotic or biological variables that are being measured. Here it's just environmental or abiotic, because it's the levels of contaminants. Here it's again just biological, because it's the species. And in the first design it's both. The animals are biological variables or biotic variables, and the pollutants are environmental variables. That distinction is not too important in terms of things such as analysis of variance and correlations and scatter plots, but it does become more important when we get to multivariate analyses that are considered in topic 6. Okay, I hope that was helpful. If you've got further questions, please contact me about them.